Welcome to Wayward Writers. We are very excited for this episode all about the Descriptive Thesaurus collection that is co-authored by our guest today, Becca Puglisi. Will you please tell us a little bit about her?
Absolutely. I would be honored. So Becca Puglisi is an international speaker, writing coach, and best-selling author of the Emotion Thesaurus and other resources for writers. Her books have sold over 1 million copies and are available in multiple languages, are sourced by U.S. universities, and are used by novelists, screenwriters, editors, and psychologists around the world. She is passionate about learning and sharing her knowledge with others through her blog, Writers Helping Writers. So definitely go check it out. Welcome, Becca.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
We are thrilled to have you. So we got to know, how did you get into writing and what did you write before you started the Thesaurus collection?
I have a really unorthodox path to writing. I wasn't one of these people who wrote all the time. My son wrote his first story at 4. He's already written a novel. He's been doing it his whole life. And that was totally not me. I was 30 years old and I was in a position where I needed to make a little extra money. And so I prayed and I said, God, how can I make some money? And he said to me, write a book. And had I known more about writing and less about God at that time, I probably would have said, okay, that's a terrible idea. I said, okay, well, I'm teaching first. I'm reading all of these books all the time. I can write a kid's book. So I wrote a chapter book and it was terrible, but I loved it. I really loved the process and all the different pieces of it. And I felt like even though the end result was not great, I had kind of a knack for it. So I just kept doing it. I tried some picture books. That was even harder.
Yes.
And then I went to young adult and I wrote quite a bit of historical fiction and fantasy for young adults. And that's how I got started. That's what I did in the beginning.
Great.
Wow. That's really cool. How did you and Angela meet? And can you tell us a little bit about her and your partnership?
Yeah, we both started writing. She's in Canada and I'm in Florida. So we're way far apart. We both started writing about the same time. I had finished my book and, so smart. I just started sending it to publishers. It hadn't been edited. Nobody had looked at it. I thought, okay, it's finished. This is the next step. And I got a response back. It was handwritten, which was everything back then. And this editor was basically saying, listen, this is not how it works. You need somebody to edit this book. You need other people to read it. And I said, okay. So I went looking for critique groups and I found Critique Circle, which is an online space for people to submit their work and have people critique it and for them to critique other people's work. And so I joined that site in 2004 and Angela had just joined as well. And we found each other in the Kidlit section and just fell in love with each other's writing and started a long-term critique partner relationship. And that's kind of how we got started. We did that for a while, for about 4 years. And then I was pregnant with my first child. I was getting ready to take a break from writing. And she sent me an email and said, listen, if we're going to publish our fiction, we have to have an online presence. We have to have something online. We both know this. So let's do it together because it'll be much easier to do it together. And I'm 6 months pregnant. I'm the timing is terrible. But I realized that she was completely correct. So at that point, we started a blog. It's Writers Helping Writers now. It was called The Bookshelf Muse when we first started. And that's really where our professional relationship began. But we've been together now for 20 years, which is crazy.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And can we go back to that handwritten editorial letter for just a second? Even then, that is huge. Thank goodness that editor took the time to reach out, and I think that's what makes this industry amazing is finding those people that you just generally, they want to help. They want to help writers. They want to grow. And I think that's awesome. And then also the timing, right? It just never feels like the right timing for anything that has to do with writing, at least in my opinion.
It's true.
Well, it would be better if I waited. And the thing is, right, there's always something. Now, granted, there's a season for everything. Yeah. Sometimes you need a break, right? But it's nice that you had Angela, and I think it's nice when any of us have an accountability partner to like lovingly nudge and be like, right, but if not now, when, you know? Okay, so
100%.
I am a huge fan of, well, we all are. That's why I wanted you to be, I guess. And the emotion thesaurus was the first. So what ignited this idea that spurred you guys to go forward and write it?
When we were writing our fiction, I kept seeing in my own writing, my characters were always shrugging, shuffling their feet, and frowning. They were like just constant. And so I kept trying to come up with other ways of expressing those emotions. And I couldn't think, like, how else do they show frustration or embarrassment or whatever? And I went to Angela and I'm like, I keep noticing this. And she said, oh my gosh, I have the same problem, but my characters are always smiling or clenching their fists. And she had a whole other set that it was the same problem. So I said, let's start a list. Like, let's start lists of major emotions and just start brainstorming different things that are happening externally, different things that are happening inside, so that we know and we have resources for how to show those emotions instead of just using the same descriptors over and over. So that's how it actually started. We had probably, 8, 9, 10 main emotions that we were working with. We took it to our critique group and they all said, gosh, this is exactly what I need. And we were like, wow, this is like a universal problem that people have kind of in the beginning.
Sure.
And so when we started our blog, we thought, okay, we want to blog for authors. We want material that authors can use that's going to be really practical and helpful for them. Why don't we take those lists and once a week we'll do a new emotion? And so we're giving people what they want. They're going to come back because it's something that they need. And so that's what we did. That was the first thing we started at the blog, and it just blew up. Like, people were coming in droves just for that one thing every Saturday to see the next emotion and the different things that we had come up with. And we realized, okay, this is a problem that didn't have a solution. And we just stumbled on the solution really out of our own necessity and our own writing, realizing we needed to find a solution to our own problem. So that's how the emotion thesaurus started. And it was very widely accepted. People were kind of clamoring for us to put it in book form. And so we decided to do that in 2012. And that's where it all started.
The rest is history.
That's right.
So what made you want to just put it out self-pub instead of trying to, again, go the traditional route with it?
Angela and I, that was completely our path. That was what we wanted. We wanted the letter of acceptance saying, you're awesome and we want to publish your book. And so that was always our plan. And we started moving in that direction, but we started seeing pieces of our content on other people's sites. People were basically lifting the lists off of our blog and sites without any, credit or link backs or anything.
Couldn't wait. Wow.
And we realized we can't wait. We can't wait to do a traditional contract. Sure. It's going to be 2 years probably before we even get to the point of we'd have to get an agent and, shop it around. And so we said, we have no time. We have to do it ourselves. Terrifying, because that was, again, 2011, 2012, when there was still a big stigma about self-publishing.
Sure.
And it wasn't widely accepted or respected. And we knew nothing about the process. Like, we had zero idea how to go about it. We had to figure it all out ourselves. But that's why we went that route. And oh my gosh, we are so excited that we did it that way, because
definitely,
for all of the reasons, it's just definitely the right decision.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah. And for our viewers, if you haven't gotten a chance, our first few episodes talk about the pros and cons of traditional publishing and self-publishing and hybrid and small houses. And so that elaborates kind of what Becca is talking about. And obviously it was the right business move and the right move for probably your sanity, like, seeing your work other places, you know what I mean? We all, that can happen. So good for you guys for being brave and, diving into something you didn't know, no matter what the path is. I mean, that is huge. So bravo to both of you.
Yeah.
Talking about the poor timing, I mean, we then had to really kind of rush and figure it all out and get it done. And I had a 2 and a 3-year-old, I think, at the time. And I remember vividly editing, sitting at my computer trying to edit. And I had one kid with a fake thermometer in my mouth, and the other one had the blood pressure cup, and they're like, oh, and I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, that's crazy. What am I doing?
This is my life.
I had a picture.
I'm just going to say,
if I had a picture of that would have encompassed like a whole span of years.
Becca, why didn't you have time to go find your camera and take that picture? Gosh darn it. Gosh. No, that is a priceless moment right there. And a great story. Thank you for sharing that, because I remember when mine were little, and even now that they're teenagers, sometimes I'm like, oh, well, you would know those boundaries now. And you try to teach them, but you're still parenting or whatever, many hats, right? So yeah, that's awesome.
Well, we're glad you endured it.
Yes.
And kept going, because we love your book. So can you describe your thesaurus collection and how writers can use them? And is there anything in your thesauruses beyond examples or similar words?
Yeah, thesaurus, I think, is, it's a little bit misleading because you have a very specific picture in mind of a thesaurus. It's a list of words that convey the same meaning. But we chose that word because the format is like a thesaurus in that it's lists and not like a narrative, paragraphs of information. But like in the emotion thesaurus, we have a 2-page spread for the different emotions. And we have, what I'm trying to find, there we go. So like it looks like this. And we look at all the physical signals and behaviors of a person when they're feeling confused. And there's all these different options here. And then internal sensations, what's happening inside, like the drop in the belly or the butterflies in the stomach or tense muscles, all the stuff that only the viewpoint character can reference. Mental responses, we have acute or long-term responses for somebody who's kind of stuck in that situation for a long time. The situation changes, their responses are going to change. And then signs of suppression, since a lot of characters are going to try to hide their feelings.
Right.
And then we had emotions that it could escalate to. So people know, okay, my character's confused. What is going to happen next? They're either going to escalate or they're going to de-escalate, and what emotions might follow that situation. And there's a writer's tip at the bottom of each page. And each book is a little bit different. It has different material. We try to think, okay, what is going to be most useful for writers to help them primarily show this element of storytelling, whether it's emotions or settings. Emotional wounds, that is a whole different animal because it dives pretty deep into psychology. And so it's got a lot of the steps, when a character experiences a wound, what happens next? What happens after that? What lies do they believe? What fears are going to develop? What dysfunctional behaviors are going to come out of that? What personality traits will form? So it just depends on the content, but we have just different fields that we tried to think what would be most helpful in helping the author to show this, whatever it is, to their readers, but also to help authors understand how it all works and how it kind of goes together. Because all of these elements, they're not standalone. Emotions come from somewhere and they lead to other things. And sometimes there's conflict involved, right, and sometimes there's a wound involved. And so it's all kind of related in different ways. And so we want to really instruct with these as much as we do offer brainstorming. And there's always instructive front matter, I should say. There's the first 30 or 40 pages that go over different elements of that storytelling piece and explain the different problems that arise, how to troubleshoot, how to show, not tell, sometimes how it relates to villains instead of just to the protagonist.
Like a workshop. It's a lot. It's a workshop in the front, which I love.
It is a workshop. That's exactly what I was thinking.
When I purchased my first one like a decade ago, because I still have the original, I need to upgrade the first edition. And I was thrilled just to get the list, right? And then the first 40 pages, I was like, bonus, you know what I mean? And I know you can also get the online version, but like I'm a tactile person, so I know I have to schlep them around when I travel. But, there's something about being able to look and find it. And so I think that's huge. You listed a few of them, but would you mind just letting what all the ones that you currently have published right now? Because a lot of times people, I know like the setting ones, that was a huge thing, like making your settings become a character in their own, which is a total help with those. So.
Yeah, we started with emotions, and then when we finished that and it kind of had done really well, we thought, okay, well, what can we write about next? And we always go back to our own writing. Like, what are we struggling with? And we were having some problems with characters and characterization. And so we thought, okay, we'll tackle character traits. So we have a positive trait thesaurus and a negative trait thesaurus that talks about like where those come from, how they develop, how you can create a character with a mixture that makes sense. And it's not just like random, oh, I like this one, or this one's always been interesting. It's, building a character with traits that make sense. After that was the setting thesauruses. We have an urban setting and a rural setting volume that basically looks at different locations you might include in your story and what are the smells, textures, sounds, tastes, sights that you might experience there, so that authors, even if they can't get to a certain location and they want to write about it, they can write about it in a multisensory way, which is, super engaging. After that, it was the emotional wound thesaurus, which again looks at wounds and basically your character's past events, what has happened to them and what has resulted because of those wounds that has created who they are at the start of your story as kind of a stuck, semi-broken character that is going to have to undergo this change over the course of your story. Then we looked at occupations. That was interesting because is kind of not an obvious one, but we were looking at, all the ways that you can use occupations in your story if you choose them thoughtfully. They can characterize, they can hint at motivation, they can hint at what's wrong. If someone is running from something and they have taken a certain job because it allows them to escape or not have to go that way. Lots of different things there. And then we did the conflict thesaurus, which has 2 volumes, again, just because there were too many complex scenarios to put into one book. And emotion amplifiers is an e-booklet. It's not a paperback because it's so small. That one we did kind of in the middle somewhere. When we were writing the emotion thesaurus, we kept coming up against these things that weren't exactly emotions, but they were really, really closely related to emotions. And what we determined is that they're not emotions themselves, but they amplify, they're states or conditions that amplify the emotional state of the character, like injury, like when you get sick, when you're feeling bored, when you experience attraction, like all of these things are temporary states that elevate the character's emotions and then put them in a vulnerable state where they very often are going to act rashly or make mistakes or misread situations. And so we thought, okay, well, we don't have really enough for a paperback book. We'll just put that into an ebook. So it's got 15 entries in it, but we are actually redoing that one. And that's going to be our next publication coming out in May. Over time, Cool. We have realized, wow, there's a lot more of these than just the initial 15 that we thought about. And there's a lot more that they can do in your story. So we've expanded it into a second edition and it's going to be in a form and like a real book.
That's great. And if people are not familiar with these thesaurus, like there's 2 perspectives. Well, there's probably more to go at them, right? Like it can be a resource and, for me but you can also like read it like a book from front to cover, if you don't know where you want your setting or you don't know what job you want this person, I feel like it gives you more of a creative instead of maybe picking the one that's really common to like, you could almost go backwards instead of what would a, therapist do and be like, I want my character to have these traits. What occupation? It's very fascinating.
It's cool that you can kind of approach it from different directions and not necessarily the linear way that we tend to think that we would be planning.
Correct.
And people do use it the ways that you're saying. They may come to it, oh, I'm going to get this book because I'm writing about this and I know that this is in there and I want that information. But a lot of people will just use it as a brainstorming resource to look through and see what's interesting or, oh my gosh, I've never thought about that, or that would actually be perfect in my story and I never considered it. So they are cool. They can be kind of multifunctional that way.
Sure.
So I love these books and I'm not trying to be negative here, but I am going to play the devil's advocate for a moment because I do feel like you can only contain so many of these ideas in a book. And do you think that providing this easier solution than having to imagine something or have the author come up with something original, do you feel like this is narrowing the scope of possibilities for the writer that uses this thesaurus?
Well, I think that what we do with these books is we encourage people to think beyond what we actually have in the books. There are, yes, the emotion thesaurus has how many? 130 different emotions, but there are others that we didn't include because they were too similar or they were really close to something already. There is nothing to stop other people from, taking the format that we have done and just making their own, adding a new emotion to their book and creating their own behaviors and their internal sensations and the mental responses for that emotion. And in the same way, take the existing entry and add to it, because they're by no means, like you said, comprehensive. A problem that I think we've had to kind of overcome is that some people look at these books and they think, well, you can't just take this stuff and just plop it into your book. That's not going to make for a good story. Right. It's not going to make for a realistic character. And they're 100% right. That's not the intention that we had. We don't want this to be used as a cut and paste tool. This is really supposed to be used as brainstorming. And then you take something that fits for your character and you tweak it to fit exactly what is needed for your character or your story. That's the best way, because to make your characters authentic and to make everything tie together into your story is to take what we have and make it your own and make it fit and work for your situation.
That's great. And I think it gives a good pattern too for doing that because, it helps you. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in those books that I never would have thought of. So I think that it does provide like a good pattern for you to make your own or add to it. Like you said, gives you things you wouldn't have thought of.
For sure. I mean, like the occupation thesaurus. Oh my gosh. There were thousands that we have chosen and we really had to narrow it down and figure out what is going to be most useful, what combination of really popular and helpful careers, but also the ones that are not mainstream that people may not have thought of to give them ideas. And we get constantly emails from people. Can you create this one?
Oh, I'm sure. I was going to ask you. Just so you know, this was my experience. And I think that's, like you're saying, is the beauty of it. It's kind of like the conversation about AI or, like with writing, like it doesn't bring the experience to it. Right. That is what you're giving. You're giving writers a tool that we can bring our experiences or experiences of other people to it. And that is the beauty of storytelling. So that's great. Okay, wait. I have to insert a question here. In the occupational thesaurus, is there a literary agent and a writer in there?
There is a ghostwriter.
Oh,
there is
that's
not
cool.
An agent.
Probably smart, Becca.
I want to request that one.
What about an editor? I mean, let's get honest here.
We don't want to upset people. That would be the wrong one to get wrong and misrepresent.
That's so funny.
That's funny.
That ghostwriting one, though, that's interesting. So it's all interesting.
Yeah. We tried to think, okay, the people who are reading this book, they're authors themselves. They're writing novels. That may not, they can kind of figure that out themselves. What can we do in the writing field that is a little bit, that could be applicable, but is a little bit different. Again, just to provide enough information that they branch out and do other aspects of writing or, come up with new ideas that are in the field, but a little bit different, just to give it a little bit of a twist.
That's awesome. So which one is your favorite and why, Becca?
I really like the setting Thesauruses because for sentimental reasons, my kids, again, were 4 and 5 at that time. And Angela and I really wanted to go to as many of the locations as we could to get firsthand experience. And so I dragged my kids all over the world to all the different places. We went to the marina. We went to the train station. We went to the zoo. I took them to the liquor store.
That's amazing.
That was not the best, probably, parenting choice, but
I love it.
It was just, I felt like at that time I was killing it as a mom. I was balancing. I was doing the work and I was also with my kids and we were doing meaningful activities and we were out of the house and we were spending time together. And I just remember thinking of that time as feeling just really good about where I was and the choices I had made with career and family. And just those are kind of special moments now that I have in my memories with my kids. So when I'm looking back through those books, I can remember, when we went here, when we went there. The emotional wound thesaurus too, from a writing standpoint is my favorite because I think it has so much information in it. It's really steeped in psychology. We got really deep into that because we want our characters to mirror real life so that readers can relate to them and it all rings true. And to do that, we had to figure out what is the process? Like when these horrible things happen to us in life, what results from that? How does a person get from the person they were 5 years ago and this terrible thing happens and now all of a sudden they're here and they're different? We wanted to figure all of that out. So I think that book was the most eye-opening and like, oh my gosh, as we were researching, it was just revelatory, like figuring out things about yourself and about other people in your life. And it's so much information about the whole character arc. Here's who they were in the past. Here's who they are right now at the start of your story. And here's what they have to do in order to become fulfilled and achieve their goals at the end of the story. It's kind of like the whole picture. So I like that one too for those reasons.
That one's my favorite. For sure.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, and sometimes when I first got it, I wanted to devour it in a whole, but like I had to do it in digestible because 100%. It was like either like, oh my goodness, for unknown wounds that I don't have. And then other times it was almost like a therapy session, very therapeutic and eye-opening for yourself. So I can't imagine the research, that went into, and I'm sure there was moments even for you and Angela where you were like, okay, I need to pause for a minute. This is too close to home, or, oh, that's why this person feels that we had to add extra time.
Oh, I bet. We always plan it all out and okay, this is what we did last time. This is what we're going to do this time. And we couldn't go and go and go. We had to stop and take a break much more often during the writing of it because it's heavy. It's heavy. And just realizing, okay, the weight of, yes, we're trying to provide information to authors, but these are real things that people are dealing with and struggling with on a daily basis. And how do we handle that responsibly? It was a lot. Yeah.
I bet.
But so worth it. The end result has just, again, that whole timeline, the whole picture of how it all plays out and how you can apply it to a character in a story. I think it's super helpful.
Well, we think so. I was just at a workshop weekend and I asked, what craft books do you recommend? And they recommended your Thesaurus collection. So, there's a reason for it. So we really appreciate you and Angela, digging deep for yourself and being vulnerable to experience all of those things. And then we get to search the ones we want to.
That's right. Skip around.
So switching gears a little bit, how did One Stop the Writer come to be?
We had 3 books out. We were working on the setting books and someone contacted us. His name was Lee Powell and he had written everything for Scrivener for Linux and Word. And he was an author like on the side and he just said, I love your Thesauruses. They're so helpful. I think it would be really great to have an online database with all of your entries so that they're hyperlinked and people can search across all of them. What do you think about that? And we were like, yes. Oh my gosh, that would be fantastic. So we partnered with him and created One Stop for Writers. And that was the initial idea for it. And as we published new Thesauruses, we just add the entries there. But we kept thinking like, okay, we have this vehicle and it's got all of our content. What would be really helpful is like a story mapping tool so people can plan out the structure of their story. And so we created a story structure tool. And then we thought, okay, we have all this content that plays into character arc between the emotion thesaurus and the negative and positive traits and emotional wounds. Let's make a character builder where people can build their character from scratch and figure out the backstory, the motivations, the physical details, all of that, and have it all in one spot. And build their character from the ground up. And so we built that. So it's just really grown and evolved as we've realized the different things that we could create with that website. So that's actually a subscription-based site, and it's got all of theixentries for our thesauruses, even the ones that are not published. They're all hyperlinked, searchable. And then we have, tools for world building. We have worksheets. We have tip sheets. We have just all the different things that we thought would be helpful in the different aspects of storytelling. We've got lots of resources there.
So essentially that makes a Bible, right, for your book?
Yeah.
A book Bible. So then is that just saved on that site, or can you download your book Bible, or is that just stay there and then you just have access to it?
You can use it online. Everything's saved in your workspace on the site, but you can generate PDFs of everything and download those for reference.
Wow. Okay. Awesome.
That's very cool.
Wow. That's amazing.
It's a great investment and or gift idea. I feel like sometimes,
for sure.
We get to a certain age where it's like, well, what do you want? And it's like, well, I have, this is a great opportunity to get something that you need and you want.
Even if you don't need it, it just makes your life easier.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's all in one place, and I love the cross-reference. And because, sometimes it's like, it's not really a rabbit hole. It's important to your character arc and your development, but you don't necessarily know which route to take. And so that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
No, forget AI. Just go to one step.
Right.
That's right.
Don't stop worrying about that. We'll figure this out. At least that's what I keep telling myself. And Nikki, you have too much to do to be worried about that, right?
That's a whole other episode.
No, that is a whole other episode.
It's like 10 other episodes.
Yeah, it really is.
I don't even want to think about.
So what is the best way for people to get their hands on the source collection? Is there discounts for paperback, or if you purchase the whole set?
We don't have discounts simply because we priced the paperbacks, especially, both of them actually, paperbacks and digital, as low as we can.
Yeah.
We do offer discounts for bulk orders for booksellers and conferences and things if they're ordering a whole schwack of books. But there is information on each book at our website at writershelpingwriters.net on the bookstore page. You can click on the book you're interested in, and it takes you to all of the different links where you can buy it wherever you prefer to buy, whether it's Amazon or Kobo or Barnes & Noble, Google, or whatever. It's all there on our site.
That's great. And I feel like these books are addictive, not in a way from you guys, but just the wealth of information you get that then you're like, well, wait, where's the next one? And so, it's nice to have them all there. So for sure.
Yeah.
And you kind of gave us a sneak peek about the emotional amplifier being published, correct? Is there any others that we can have some teasers about that you can share?
We go one book at a time. So we have no idea what the next one will be. We'll wrap this one up in May. It'll be out into the world. And once that's finished, we'll start planning the next one and looking at different collections we've done. We do a new thesaurus at the blog each year to kind of gauge interest and see what the response is. Some of them have been okay, but not really a great response. Or is there really enough here for a whole book? Those just stay at the site or at One Stop. But we have some good, thesauruses that we started that we got some good feedback about. Cool. And those are the ones that kind of go into the hopper for ideas for next time. And we just have to figure out if it would make a good book, if we would be able to fill it up with really helpful and practical content.
That's fair.
Wow. Love it. Well, we are so grateful that you came and spent some time with us today. We're both fans, and everybody go buy Becca's book.
Yes, please.
Many
books, for sure.
I know I have.
And check out One Stop Writers and writinghelpwriters.net. These are all great resources that Heather, Stephanie, and I have used, and people continue to recommend that we don't even know. So obviously something is going on. So we appreciate you, Becca. Thank you so much, and good luck. We'll be looking for the next one.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.